This is Corolla DeVille, and you're watching Inkwife TV. I began this cover-up tattoo about a month ago, and I put out a video on it, and now I'm giving you a quick recap of session 1, and later in the video I'll show you what we do for session 2 to continue it. In the first session I got all of the cover-up outlined, and we started with the flag, and then I got one good skull started and another skull outlined and a couple of roses. So now it's been about a month and his tattoo is healed up, and we are going to begin the second part of the cover-up. This tattoo is going to go down his arm completely by the end of it, but this, and I will show you videos on that, but for the first part, I really wanted to cover up on I wanted to focus on covering up the old flag so that it looked like something was finished up top. The first thing I did to get the flag behind it to disappear is I used some black to start working in the shadows. These skulls have to be very dark to work as a cover-up, but what's great about skulls is within reason, a lot of some of the tattoo, if it shows through a little bit, your eye will be tricked and you won't notice that it's old tattoo behind it. You'll just think, oh, there's texture in that skull. So that is why skulls make a really, really good cover-up. Working on this inner part of the arm, to me, is really difficult. That skin is a pain to tattoo on. It stretches a lot and it swells funny, and it's hard to get it smooth, and it's easy to see needle texture on that area. The black portion that I've shaded in is still very, very rough looking, but when I put gray tones on top of it, it will help to soften how harsh it looks right now. It looks kind of jagged to me, but it softens once I get a lot of the gray in there. Another purpose that the gray serves is it helps to even up the skin tone, so you don't see as much difference between the fresh tattoo and the old tattoo. Old tattoos tend to be more gray toned than fresh new ones. So if you work some gray into the touch-up, it will help to mute the old tattoo that's in the background, help it to disappear. Anything that is left showing through the skull at the end of this will be worked on in the next session. It won't need much, just some white and gray highlights and some touch-ups in some place to help what is left of the flag really start disappearing into the background. When I was finished working on the skull for the day, I moved on up into the rose. The client wants watercolor roses to contrast with the dark skulls, and that's something that I really enjoy doing. I like doing watercolor and I like doing flowers. So for me, this was what I consider to be the fun part. It's going to get boring doing skulls over and over, but watercolor roses are great. I first needed a lot of dark shadows in there because this rose at the top is being used a little bit as a cover-up, and there's a rose on the background that's also a cover-up, and so we're going to need a lot of shadows in there for the flowers to work as cover-ups. Because the flowers are going to be kind of a watercolor theme, I can use colors wherever I need, so I'm not like tied to a particular tone. I can just use whatever colors work best for a cover-up and go with that. The first dark colors I used on the rose is a purple concentrate. A lot of purples and blues work really very well as cover-ups. So I wanted to use a lot of teals, and I'm using a teal concentrate right now too. I wanted to work a lot of teals into the leaves, and then purples into the bottom feather, the bottom petals on this part, because purple will cover the black successfully. I didn't want the petals to be just teal, so I worked some green into it as well. It gives them kind of a watery look, but I like them being more teal toned instead of just green tone. Back on the flower, we went in and added some medium purple. As you can see, it works pretty good as a cover-up, and then I used some light fuchsia on the edges of the petals. With the watercolor, there's not many rules that I'm following. I'm putting the colors in where A, I think they'll work as a cover-up, and then B, where I think they're going to balance and blend. I don't want it to look like just, somebody threw a bunch of colors into a blender. They still have to have some flow in the tones with the watercolor. So, purples are naturally going to blend more into pink. Pink might blend into some orange. And teal, I have found, is a very handy color that you can drop into a lot of surprise places. In the lighter areas, I wanted to work some bright tones so that it didn't look too dark being a cover-up, and I found that oranges were a nice touch. And some of my medium and lighter pinks also worked very great. A few more highlights with the teal. And I think we're about done with this first rose. Now we've moved on to the back one, and we're not going to take near as much time watching this because, well, we've already seen it done once. But this rose was obviously way more of a cover-up than the one on the front. Once this rose is finished, you can still see some of the lines peeking through. But it's definitely a rose, and when I go back in a second time, I will add some more depth and highlights to help those lines behind the rose disappear. Blue is also an excellent color for covering up. I didn't use any blue except for teal colors on the front rose, but on this back one I wanted some blue concentrate and some true blue because this is the harder cover-up to get to be believable. I still used my purple concentrate too because purples and blues work great together. Magenta is also a good color to use in depths And as with the same on the front, I like adding teal highlights everywhere. So I indulged in those on the back. Teal will make a very good cover-up color too. The light teal works great in highlights for cover-ups. Sometimes it even works better than whites. So if you're trying to get something to really stand out, if you can find a way to use a really bright teal or a bright mint green along the edge, it gives a really cool glowing effect. For the center of the flower, I used mostly pinks and purple concentrate. I felt that was, good stable tones for the center of the flower. The outside gets super colorful, but the center, I didn't want to be too crazy. So after I used mostly pinks, I touched up with a little bit of orange highlights and a little bit of teal to pull it all together. And then finished up on the leaves at the bottom. And that finished session 2. So once again, here's where we began. Here's where we are now. When we go in for our next session, anything that's still showing through, we will go over and touch up and then continue working on down his arm. I look forward to showing you how this sleeve continues. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next week.